Welcome to the Localization Fireside Chat. I'm Robin Ayub, your host. Join me for captivating conversations with industry leaders exploring localization, translation, and global communication. Ignite your curiosity as we expand your horizons through these conversations. So let's dive in together into the Localization Fireside Chat.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Localization Fireside Chat podcast and YouTube channel. I'm Robin Ayub, the founder of this platform. And for those who may not have crossed paths with, I appreciate it if you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to hook up with you, happy to link up with you, and let's connect. It is, for me, it is a pleasure and great honor this morning to have a good friend and a colleague that I've worked with for many years, Bryan Montpetit. Welcome to the channel. Bryan is a dynamic professional who's known for his role as a business consultant and specialized in growth strategies. So welcome. I know it's too early for you in California, so thank you for getting up early and being part of this conversation. It's always to have a connection with you, and it's always to have the opportunity to have a discussion, a debate with you. We've had those over the years many times, and I always enjoyed them. So welcome to the channel. The floor is yours. If you don't mind, Bryan, just as we say on this channel, everybody's got a story in localization. Some of them are interesting. Some of them are crazy. How they got into it. So you must have a story. So tell us your story. Tell the audience your story.
Yeah, sure thing. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And getting up early is my thing. So I'm up at 4:30, 5 o'clock. So this is great timing. Right. So my story starts almost 25 years ago. So I was programming. I have a programmer analyst degree. I was living in Europe and working for a development firm. And that was my first exposure to localization. So I had no idea about localization prior to that. I was very, very, very green in terms of development. And it was really, while we were developing these systems, because of all the close proximities of the different countries in Europe, we needed to localize our software because everyone, the different population was using it. So that was my first exposure. And after my stint in Europe, when I moved back to Montreal, I started a web development firm and ended up sharing an office space really by coincidence with a translation company, pure coincidence. And they kept coming over, every other day and asking about character encoding and file issues and file types, and can they convert things. And, from that, we just started, collaborating more and more. And then, every other day became every day, and then, every half day. And then we just basically, they absorbed us. I started working with them, evaluating. My first gig with them was evaluating CAT tools. So I was, that's how I kind of got into the industry, and I haven't left. So I developed a project management system for them. I evaluated, it was SDLX back in the time. And from then, we got to hop over into SDL way back when, now RWS. And I think I was the second person or third person on the SDLX team, in North America. So that was pretty cool. And that's, I haven't left the industry since.
Well, you share a very common story with everybody that people who come to the industry, they hardly leave. I don't have any valid statistics on them, but I haven't yet to talk to somebody that says, hey, I came to this industry, didn't like it, and I left. Most of the stories I hear is, I came to the industry, I loved it, and I don't want to go anywhere else.
Naturally, I came in when I was very young, so I don't have, a lot of comparison to draw. But that's exactly my story, right? I came in, I love it. I love the people. I've always been involved in the ALC, for example, which is a great group of people. CLIA, also a great group of people. The industry just seems to be so collaborative and open. And I think it's just a wonderful space. And naturally, it's global, right? So we're dealing with different cultures, different languages, and that's what life's all about. So it makes sense that we want to stay.
Absolutely. And I probably told you my story. So I've been around for almost 20 years as well, and I came to it by a complete accident. Mine it was like something you hear like in a James Bond movie or something. I don't know. I was coming back from a flight, from the US back home. I was living in Moncton, New Brunswick, just to remind a listener with this short story. And the gentleman who was sitting beside me had to run a translation company in Moncton, New Brunswick. He convinced me to go work for him over a 2-hour flight, and many gins later, I ended up working in the localization industry, I guess. And the rest is history.
Fantastic.
So So just to loop back on, what are you doing now? Like, what status are you in now?
Right. So I am currently a consultant in growth strategies. So what I do is I leverage from my experience, having worked on both the technology side of the industry and the service side of the industry. I've always kind of hopped back and forth and crossed that line many times, which has given me really, really great perspective on how, tech companies are building themselves within our industry, as well as service companies and how they're building themselves in our industry. And given the fact that, with my tech background, I specialized in SEO and digital strategies in terms of marketing, that's given me a lot of perspective. So what I do now is I actually engage with companies, language companies, although I do have clients that are outside the industry, and we assess their, what they're currently doing. So we perform an audit on how everything's going. We look at the strategies they're employing, who their target market is, who they're trying to attract, and we work together to ensure that I can leverage that experience to implement strategies for them and their niche and bring them primarily inbound, but we also work with the outbound strategies as well. So yeah, it's so far so good. I can't complain.
Well, this is very timely, and it's very needed in our industry, this type of service. Everybody I talk to on this channel, and we've been interviewing people every week for the past almost 6 months.
Little while.
Now. Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, 6 months in today's age is like 20 years ago. So I wanted to ask the question. The biggest problem right now in our industry is revenue generation. And so everybody I talk to, help us solve the revenue issue. It doesn't matter what the size of the company is, small, big, medium size, large companies, everybody wants more revenue. So what is your scan when you take a look broadly across the industry, right, on the revenue topic? What is your assessment?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've got a lot. So there's the big guys out there, right? So obviously, you work with one of them. So these massive LSPs are, I think their revenue, they always want more too, but I think they're set. I'm not going to talk about those companies there. But when we trickle down into like the medium and smaller size businesses, I mean, they're honestly looking for a way to compete, right? A way to be relevant in, the changing dynamic of this industry. So what I'm seeing is that a lot of the companies between, for example, the 1 to 5 million are looking for really, really rapid growth. They want to hit that 10 million. It's kind of one of those benchmarks that they're just like, we want to get to 10 million. And that's kind of where I'm fitting in, and I'm finding a lot of traction. And it's really about setting it up properly so that they're not looking just for, and when I said rapid growth, they're not just looking for that growth, but looking for sustainable growth. So that's where we come in with the strategic aspect of what I do. So what I'm seeing in terms of all these smaller companies is they are obviously facing a limitation in terms of the ability to hire massive marketing teams or go out and like spend all this money. So what they spend actually has to have the greatest impact. So yeah, it's really interesting. But most of what I'm seeing is that they are potentially, I'll use the word lacking for lack of better terms, but lacking in digital marketing and sales,
quite frankly.
So they've got their processes down and everything else, but it's really those two areas that just,
that's right. So
tough.
And there's a couple of things going on, and this is a very interesting topic for me because I'm very, as you are well aware as well, very intimate with that topic a little bit because of my background, because I've been working on for the past many years. So one of the things it just comes to mind is for the medium to small to medium sized companies in our industry. Is it marketing or is it sales, or is it a debate between the two? Where are we? Yeah. Where's the focus?
So everyone is actually focusing on sales. If you look, for example, at all the recruitment, companies out there, they're all looking for business development. I think it might be, dare I say it, not the best strategy to move ahead just and build that sales team, although it's important. But these smaller teams leveraging inbound, I think is what's going to help them the most. I mean, they have the least amount of friction in terms of closing those deals, right? So you do need salespeople, but if you can get a healthy flow of inbound leads, you're going to close those down a lot quicker and with less, effort than going out and trying to establish, the cold calls and the cold email sequences and all these types of things. So yeah, for the smaller companies, I'm really thinking that the digital marketing side is a better way to go, because once you have the inbound leads coming in, in a recurring fashion and steady fashion, that just creates a wonderful baseline that you guys can just keep closing while you invest money into going out and doing other sales strategies.
So one of the things that, not just the localization companies
Right.
struggle with is the budget allocation between marketing and sales. and this is not specific to localization. Everybody knows
right.
that.
No, everywhere. Yeah.
So are you seeing a shift?
So I'm still seeing everyone putting their money into the business development side. With what I'm doing now, I mean, obviously there are people that are seeing value in what I do and what the digital marketing side of things can bring them. So I do see people willing to spend, but it's not in the. I think the ratio is off. Let's put it that way. So I think that the ratio should shift towards marketing to actually feed sales and enable sales, but that doesn't seem to be happening. So. Yeah.
And when it comes, Bryan, to the topic of short-term goals versus long-term goals, because when you're developing something like this, you're doing cultural shift in a lot of cases.
Oh my gosh,
what's
yes.
the appetite of it? Am I hitting a nerve on that one?
No, it's really fun. I think that there's a lot of people that have these. They go in with a particular mindset. They forget about, the reason why they started what they're doing. And I mean, I think all this gets diluted as you get bigger a little bit, unless you have a very, very solid, culture implemented. But the purpose and why people are actually building their businesses is really critical to how they're actually going to grow their business and what drives the growth. So I think that the mindset shift of people, I think they're locked in this. Yeah, most of the people I'm seeing are stuck in their business, right? So they're working in their business and not on their business, as we say. So they are having trouble getting out of that mindset of being in the weeds and getting things done and pulling back and then looking at everything from a strategic perspective. So again, because I deal with the smaller companies, it takes a lot, I think, for the business owners or upper management to have that mindset shift. It really is ingrained that they need to focus on getting things done and deliver all the time. So I think there is definitely a coaching aspect when I come in as well, that I think it's healthy to do it and be challenged. But yeah, I definitely see the people not necessarily resisting, but having to adapt or accept that new mindset. So, and I mean, I think you guys, with where you work as well, you've got massive sales teams, you've got global presence, you've got a lot of things, and I think the corporate culture mindset is more ingrained. And it's very different from how the small guys operate. So it's really
sure. I mean, the small entrepreneurs are working at an entrepreneurial level, right? So I mean, this is not unusual for an entrepreneur to be the HR, the head of sale.
Oh my gosh, so many hats,
right?
so many
hats, which is typical. So, but my concern is with everything that's going on in our industry and the changes that we're seeing, that the small, medium-sized entrepreneurs now are fighting for survival.
Of course. Yeah.
And if they don't do these changes that you're talking about, I think it would be very hard not to see revenue degradation.
I would agree. So you brought up something that's really interesting, is that all these small companies are kind of still fighting to survive, right? Now, one of the things that I'm seeing is that there's a lot of language companies out there, and the language companies themselves, they tend to, well, that have been around for a little while. Obviously, the owners, I mean, they're getting on in years. I say they use the term boomers, but they're getting on in years, and they're actually looking to either succeed or to have a succession with their company, either to their children or to somebody else in the family, sell their company and do an exit. So, I mean, this whole survival aspect, there's this really interesting thing that's going on right now that I'm seeing, is that a lot of people are indicating that within the 5 to 10 years timeframe, they want to exit. So that actually is speeding up the fact that they need the growth, they need the stability, they need everything in place in order to be able to do that. And that is kind of changing the aspect of surviving, where they're saying, okay, it's not just surviving, we've got to grow and then, make our move. And a lot of the younger companies that are coming in, they are coming in with, tech-enabled mindsets. They're coming in with not necessarily the traditional mindset of the translation, let's call them technicians that turned entrepreneur and started their companies, So we're coming in with different mindsets, right? We're coming in from the younger entrepreneurial, tech-enabled mindsets versus the older mindsets, which are, the traditional technicians, as I'll call them, turned entrepreneurs that are looking to exit. So yeah, it's the young guys, I think, are going to do okay, but they still need the guidance and that wisdom from the older population.
But I'm assuming, that's why this multi-medium enterprise, they need your services so desperately now, because I hear, and through the.
I mean, I'm biased about that, so I
know, and you know what, and in knowing you for as many years as I've known you,
mm-hmm.
you're a person of trust. I can vouch for that, and I can say, if anybody's looking for an advice, somebody's looking for an ear to listen to,
right.
Bryan is your guy. I mean, if you're listening to this channel, and you may want to give Bryan a call. He's one of the most trusted person I've worked with, so he's a good guy to listen to. The one thing I wanted to mention in the conversation that you just had is that this multi-medium enterprise, you either survive or you set up your company for sales, and I don't know if they have 5 years, right? This is the crazy part and how things are changing.
Fair, yeah.
And so with all these changes, you got to set up your company to grow in a way that now with the industries, the way things are going. And especially on the digital marketing side of things, what kind of lead do I give you? If you don't have, a set of technical abilities to deliver, right. I could give you a lead, and I'm assuming you're stuck in that too. I can give you a lead that may not be appropriate for your company. I don't know. And so, there are few things, like I'm hearing a lot of things, and I don't know if you can comment on this one. There's a lot of companies for sales out there. I mean, I don't know, but I'm hearing nobody's going to come out and say my company's for sale. But I can see through the conversation, through the chatter, that there are many companies up for sale.
Yep. So one of the things that I'm helping companies with is creating that exit strategy, right? So getting their company ready for sale. And there are quite a few people that are coming in signaling that they have the interest that they want to sell within that next 5 to 10 years. So yeah, I'm seeing that it's a good number. I mean, I can't give a percentage naturally. I haven't pulled but I know, I know recently in a ALC survey that was put out, I think it was, I'm going to misquote this, I know, but I think it was like 3 in 10 or something to that effect that we're looking to sell within the next 5 to 10 years. So I may be misquoting that. I hope not, but I think that's what I remember.
You know what? I don't, regardless of what that number is, it's still significant. I mean, but absolutely. The other flip side of that, the entire industry is made up of small to medium-sized companies. I mean, it's an 80-20 rule in our industry companies. Anyway, 80% of the revenue of the industry is concentrated at the top 20 companies.
Yeah, exactly.
And the rest of the revenue is, I would call them, a long tail of account of industry companies that they are listed in a small to medium-sized organization. And as you mentioned earlier, they were started by a specialist in our industry.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the individual who started these companies, there are exceptions. I'm not speaking about everybody, but there are exceptions out there. Most of them, though, they're the people who do the work, who are expert in doing something. Yeah. And, they're not the individuals, the CEO with vision and how to take this company to the next level. Maybe some of them are. I'm not. Hopefully, I'm not.
There are a few impressive cases. Absolutely.
Yeah, but sometimes people need to see. I mean, in North America, we see the forest from the trees. So if I want to make sure that I want to get somewhere, I want to make sure that I have the right tools and skills. I remember early when I started this in this industry, the individual I was working with, told me flat out, it is not my specialty to grow a company. I hired you to do that. Yep. So
recognizing that is powerful.
Somebody somewhere might have to have soul searching exercise to figure out what I'm good at and what they're not good at.
Absolutely. And that's actually something that I say often as well, and it's a core belief that I have. Just because you start a company doesn't mean you're the best person to run that company. You can retain, I mean, a lot of people, they call their companies their babies. They're very emotionally attached, to their companies. One of the other things I always try and emphasize and communicate is that it's okay to be emotionally invested into your company, but try not to be emotionally attached to your company. I mean, when you create the business, you're creating it for a purpose, right? You want to grow it naturally. That's what we have to do. Whether it's lifestyle or whether it's like for the big sale at the end, you're doing it for a purpose. So I think that just coming back to those technicians, you're right. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are the best person to run the company, but being able to recognize that is powerful. Not everyone can do it. Not everyone's willing to do it.
100%. And I'm reminded, like back in the days, a few years back now, when Bill Gates was managing Microsoft and not managing Microsoft anymore, and hired somebody to manage Microsoft. So there may be some lessons out there. There are many of them, actually. I just stated one, but there are many of them where the idea person is no longer running the company and somebody else is running the company. It doesn't mean that you relinquished power and you lost everything. No.
But there's a dynamic that has to kind of set in. I mean, even when I had my LSP, right? I was doing grassroots. I built it up, and at one point, I think about my third year, I was getting some pretty significant growth or rapid growth, and I realized I'm like, I can't wear all the hats. I mean, I was aware of this, but it's understanding when that you have to make that switch over mentally. So I was looking for people to help me out. I was looking for partners. I was looking for just people with other skill sets that would complement mine, so that we could respectively, focus on our areas of expertise and do what we needed to do. I focused on growth. They focused on the administration side, and it was a happy day. But if I had to do everything and wear all the hats, it would have been horrible.
Right. And you know what? There's a lot of emotional investment in these entities when they get set up.
Yeah.
And you're right.
It's the sweat equity.
Unfortunately, yeah, absolutely correct. With business, there's less emotion and more business, and that's the balance, I think. So let's talk tech a little bit. So what's hot in your opinion right now from a tech perspective? Tools, software. What's driving the conversation right now? So I mean,
it sounds even silly to mention it, but everyone is talking AI. And I think that's where you had in the back of your head, you were like, this is what's going to come out. But everyone is talking AI. And it's everything from, is there AI in my current, tool set and tech stack, from using HubSpot that has their insights to, Google Analytics with their insights to, okay, how are we actually going to leverage, Gen AI in translation? It's interesting. I started a company called Zin Global with Angelo Pasalakov, formerly of Berg Translations in Chicago. And we originally set out to create a CRM for the language industry. We'll still do that, but the path has kind of shifted a little bit. We've had to pivot. When talking to all the LSPs, one of the main things that they signaled that they wanted was data visualization. The industry itself and our tech stacks are so fragmented that we don't have necessarily the ability to clearly see how everything interacts. So, I mean, the companies that offer translation services and interpretation services, those are almost always siloed. Like you can't get a report that kind of puts everything into one space. So getting everything from trending information in terms of the reports, over the past few years on languages and people and availabilities and, fulfillment. I mean, it's tough to get, it's really hard, which also makes coming back to the selling of companies a lot more difficult as well, because the people have to understand and get the assessments of what's going on and do their due diligence. And that makes it more complicated. But with respect to that technology, data visualization is a huge thing right now. A lot of people are coming to us still. They're asking for it. They ask for help. And actually, we're going to be putting in the AI into the back end. But one of the really, I think, interesting and kind of funny things that happened is, when was it, last November, I think, or October, when ChatGPT kind of popped out. I was in the process of having a discussion with Angelo saying, okay, well, we've got the charts, we've got this, it's going in the right direction. And he was like, have you heard about ChatGPT? And I'm like, heard about what? What? And he's like, we have to get this in. It's AI, it's this. And he went off on this, this speech of, and he was so passionate about it. I'm like, yes, we have to do that. Okay. I said, let me play with it for a little while. Let me figure out what's going on. And I kind of mashed together this tool called wtih, this platform, which is a no-code prompt engineering platform for the language industry. And what that allowed us to do is I'll just break it down to very, very, layman's terms. we coded prompts that project managers and translators can use, and they can upload their documents. They can run a whole bunch of different prompts on it. So they can actually leverage the Gen AI part and the intelligence behind all that, into their day to day. Now, that having done that, like we mashed it together in kind of like a week. We launched it in beta, and we were doing it more as a test to understand how ChatGPT worked at the time. But people started using it and liking it, and they kept signing up, and we're like, oh well, we can't kill this. We've got to keep it going now. So we've actually created another line of business that we're like, well, we need to keep this going. So we're now focusing on that as well. And we actually just launched a little chat bot that kind of sits in your browser and helps you out. You don't have to go to ChatGPT anymore to run your prompts. It understands the context of the page that you're on, so you can ask questions. So there's a lot of AI-enabled tools that are coming out that are just going to make us a lot more efficient. So that's kind of where I see things: data visualization, AI for efficiency.
And so, I'm glad you're concurring with my. If you were to tell me like, oh, we have a new one now, or we're going back to the old ways, I would have thought, no, that's not Bryan that I know.
Never. I'm going to push that envelope.
So good. So now, from an AI perspective, and we talked a little bit earlier about the survival of the small to medium size, and so. AI to me is like somebody telling me, like, I heard it so much now. It's somebody telling me, are you using MS Word? It's like MS Word in my head, right? So, and so because it's such a platform that you can do so many things with it, you can create anything. It's like a canvas. You can write anything you want on it. And so the applications and the type of application you can develop on this, correct me if I'm wrong, are endless. But how much adoption are we seeing in the space of the small to medium size from an AI perspective, from your conversation? Is this like people are open to using it, or are you finding afraid of it, or what's the story?
So there's always the doom and gloom. There's always this is going to destroy our industry. We're never going to make money. There's always that's being said. Especially, I think the little guys don't necessarily have the budget, the tech stack, or the infrastructure to really create robust AI solutions, right? So that's where that's where I think that fear stems from. But from what I've seen, everyone is open to using it. I think they're afraid of the investment into it. But the cost, the cost of entry is just so low. The barrier of entry is virtually non-existent with ChatGPT, for example. So even if you're using it in a fragmented or manual way, you can still gain benefit from it at very low cost. So I think people are open to it. I think that they need to understand it. And that's always kind of where I think the fear comes in as well. When you start trying to use something, you don't necessarily understand how it works or what it's doing, where your data is going, what it's doing with it. All these things I think is where one of those the aspects of fear is generated. But definitely see people being open to using it. I think that if they have the right mindset, they'll understand that, it is going to just enable us to be more efficient, right? We're going to be able to automate certain things, get all those manual tasks that nobody likes to do out of the way. I think it's here to stay. I think people are open to it. I think it's going to keep going. So,
and Bryan, based on the experience that you had, you came up with an idea in your company. You came up with an application that is suitable for the application for the business solution to a problem, and so and you kept it going. So you created some sort of a revenue stream. I'm assuming coming out of this. I hope people paying you for this.
And, actually, no, not yet.
Really?
It is in beta. We're actually going to be putting up a paywall, so I may have let the cat out of the bag. But right now, what we've done is we've actually let it run for almost a year now, and we've been collecting user feedback. We've kind of been getting the user experiences, and it's been beta. There are some versions that we've launched that have completely flopped, and people are just like, nope, we don't like this, and we've rolled it back and put other things in place. So yeah, we're not charging just yet. It's coming, but not yet.
It's coming. Well, I hope you get your investment out of it.
Thank you. I hope so too. I think the cost for AI, again, when you're looking at other solutions, is so low. It's not going to be the $1 million idea that you're going to make just off your paywall. But I think the fact that we are creating a low cost, solution for people is going to enable them, to actually benefit from what we've produced.
Yeah. So if I was a small business to medium-sized company, and I'm faced with all these challenges, they're coming at me right now. Technology changes, revenue is scarce out there, or they're perceived to be scarce out there, which I don't believe, to be honest with you. I feel like there's plenty of opportunities out there.
There is.
In our industry. There's plenty of customers to be served. There's plenty of content to be translated. I'm not worried about people running out of content to translate.
Nope.
So one of the things is, if I was faced with all these challenges, I'm torn. Like right now, I'm putting myself in somebody else's shoes. In this case,
right,
I'll have a decision to make. Should I hire a business analyst to create services for me in the new environment, or should I hire a salesperson? I personally be leaning to more hiring a business analyst to say, okay, we've got all these opportunities here with the new tech.
Right.
I need to create some services generated from this technology. It gives me more revenue by producing revenue generation streams. Do you agree, or am I offline on this one?
No, I definitely agree. I think when you create companies, and when you're actually, your company has been around for a little while, you need to ensure that you're focusing on being extensible, right? So the ability to pivot. And that's kind of what you're saying is, okay, the analyst is going to look at the ability to create these new revenue streams, new services, new products, what have you. And I think identifying that is key, because as we mentioned before, just because you're running that company doesn't mean you have the ability to understand or see, for example, all the possibilities out there in terms of services or product possibilities. So yeah, I definitely 100% agree with you. I think it's a fantastic point.
Yeah, we can go chasing and let's face it, the industry is such a large industry in terms of the amount of content that this industry translate on or handles on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Let's ask a fundamental question. Is 100% of the content in the localization business they're going to be moving to AI? I highly doubt it. Is a big majority of it will move to AI? Yes. So you're always going to have that pyramid shape of content where you've got at the bottom, high volume and low price, AI, automated, etc. And as we go back up to the top of the pyramid and the specialization of the content gets narrower, you are going to see, the legacy of survive in space, but it's got to shrink dramatically. Right. So, for instance, I've got my passport is in Canada. I'm traveling to whatever, and somebody asked me, I need this passport translated, certified, on paper, printed. I don't know how AI is going to do that for me, unless somebody. So I still have to hand it over to a certified translator, walk to their office, translate it, certify it, take it to a notary, stamp it. And this is obviously extreme example, but there is between this one and the content that it's being handled today by AI, there's a myriad of possibilities of where do we apply AI, where do we apply human, and that hybrid environment that we are going to live in.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same discussion with MT. We've just replaced the term with AI. I think that there's always going to be content that's suitable for MT and or NMT and or AI. But one of the things that I think we have to keep in mind, and this is important to keep in mind for all the small businesses out there as well, is the buy side. Those people are going to require some liability. They want somebody to point the finger to if something goes wrong, right? And if they're using just Gen AI to provide either marketing content and or translations, they don't have that. So they need somebody to actually be there to validate, and then ensure that everything is okay at the end of the day. And effectively what they're paying us for is not only the translation and our cultural knowledge and all the things that come along with language services, but part of it is liability.
Yeah, you're right. I'm hearing also take a drug company or life sciences company of any sort. And, they have issues and big liability if you are going to go fully automated.
For sure.
Fully automated, who are you going to blame, right? So to your point, you need somebody to go back and point the finger at.
Unfortunately, yes.
One time I was in a meeting. I have a lot of anecdotes, sorry. I was in a meeting one time, and a partner of mine was sitting across the table with me, and he was trying to support me. And one of the things he said in the meeting, which I can't believe it was said in a business meeting, you should do business with these guys because they've got a very good insurance policy. And I just, not necessarily because they do a good job. They have a very good insurance policy. I said, thanks for the support. I appreciate it. Get out of here.
Yeah, but I mean, it's funny though, but it's an important thing that, I mean, most of the U.S. companies were used to the whole, stories about U.S. because we're both sitting in Canada. Well, technically I'm in the U.S. at the moment, but, being Canadian, we're, the lawsuit culture, if you will, the suing culture is not necessarily part of us, right? We'll work things out, we'll mediate, it'll all get rectified and nobody loses their shirt at the end of the day, hopefully. But in the US, I mean, you've got to be insured, incredibly. I remember just with my LSP, when I started working with American clients, it's kind of funny, but my insurance for my company, professional liability and, errors and omissions, it tripled. When they were asking where I was doing business, I was like, oh, all right, just because of the likelihood, right? So
yeah, most companies in the US, I'm being told, I don't know, they have more lawyers than employees, but what do I know?
But yeah, so to your point, I mean, the liability aspect is really important. The insurance aspect, it's still important. It's a real thing. If companies have to pull something back off the shelves, I mean, if we're dealing with labeling or anything else, that's a big cost.
I mean, I don't want to take too much time on this one because I want to leave some time to wrap up the conversation with you. But one more point on this conversation is, have we at a point, and I'm looking to hear your opinion on it, have we at this point right now, are we reducing the conversation regarding quality to the favor of automation, to the favor of AI? Have the quality discussion taken a bit of a backseat, not completely a backseat, but a bit of a backseat in comparison to the conversation that we're having on this whole AI, cost reduction, automation, do more with less, those kinds of things?
I think quality is always implied in all our discussions. I mean, that's I don't think it's a differentiating point in terms of companies. The USP is not necessarily quality. I mean, you're supposed to be delivering something that's of quality, So I think that's one of the baselines that I think we always have. I do think that there are a lot of interesting solutions and tech out there that enable us to provide either automated or human assisted or technology assisted QA on all our material. But again, the AI thing I think is the new shiny object that we're all going, ooh, okay, let's go that way.
I didn't know.
Well, exactly, yeah, and I mean there is a lot of possibilities. I think that with Gen AI, we do have the ability to render, for example, the QA process, that much more efficient. So I think it's going to be part of QA moving forward. I think that it's again. I don't think it means that we're dismissing or ignoring the quality aspect. I think it's always implied that the quality has to be there. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, but I feel like the tolerance level for lower quality is much better now than it was, 3-4 years ago. I feel like if somebody makes a mistake, like in a user manual, or I'm not talking about a drug description or anything like that, or anything related to health sciences, but in some sort of a piece of content, people are just letting it pass by. Like there's less scrutiny on this one, and not because of the and it's not because of the LSPs or anything like this. No, if you talk about Gen AI and people taking content and generating it in ChatGPT or using ChatGPT to translate things to escape, the cost of going to an LSP. They're taking that content and just throwing it out there and not necessarily being policed by anybody, and from a quality perspective. And then you end up with not necessarily the best quality content out there. And in our industry, it takes a couple of mistakes or one mistake in general for a company, a respectable company, to end up in the public domain and the media. So
absolutely.
This is where I was going with this, not because the LSP doesn't want to do a good job. It's just because the user themselves are finding it very easy. I'll take the content, put it in ChatGPT or whatever tool they're using, and that's all I have to do. I just got rid of that translation headache.
Yeah, it's one of those things that people don't know what they don't know, right? It's they will blindly translate things, even using Google or ChatGPT, what have you, because they don't realize that the quality coming out of it is questionable. So if we're talking about typos and things like that, okay, that's something that comes down to the quality aspects of what they've produced. If we're talking about just bad translations, usually that's just because there's a lack of awareness. They just either are really trying to ensure that there's no cost associated to them, localizing their content, and they'll be automating that through whatever means, and they don't see the importance of it. So
correct.
It's unfortunate. I think so. There's a matter of awareness that comes into play, and I think that when you're dealing with people that, for example, are doing these things, just putting it in. I mean, I see opportunity in that. I'm just like, ooh, all right, there's a mistake in their documentation. Let's go talk to them. But that's me. So, I mean, would my, my parents or my brother, look at it the same way? They'd probably just like, mistake, move on. So, yeah. I mean, I think it's ingrained in me now, having worked in the industry, to be like, oh my God, there's something wrong. Let's go get it fixed. But yeah, I don't know if people outside the industry care as much as we do.
I tell you, a very interesting conversation, Bryan. I really appreciate the time we're having today together. I could talk to you for hours, but before we come up to the hour here, I want to give you the opportunity for people to reach out to you if you have anything you would like to share or comment before we wrap it up.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, I'm always of the mindset that I love helping people. That's what drives me. That's my purpose. That's what I want to do. So if people want to talk to me about anything going on in their organizations, and it's not really just to generate that sale, it's just, let's talk about it. I can be a sounding board. I always believe in having discussions with people at no cost, just to help them out and see where things go. If it generates business for me, that's fantastic. If it helps them at the end of the day and I don't get business, that's also great. So I think, BryanMontpetit.com. It's obviously, you'll see my name in the podcast listing here in the description, but BryanMontpetit.com, you can get in contact with me very easily through my website. LinkedIn as well. If you look me up, I'm all over. I'm trying to produce content on a daily basis. So you'll probably see some interesting videos, funny videos, potentially annoying videos. I'm not sure, whatever your take is, but I'm there. So yeah, I mean, I try to make myself accessible as much as possible. So BryanMontpetit.com or Bryan Montpetit on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to talk to anyone.
Thank you, Bryan, for this. And thanks to Dave for the conversation. And thanks for joining me on this podcast episode. I really appreciate it.
You're awesome. Thank you.
To our audience, thank you for joining me today as well. And thanks for taking a listen to this conversation and watching our YouTube videos. I really appreciate it if you can like, share, and comment and on this content. I really appreciate that. It would help the channel quite a bit. Thank you so much again for everybody. And until next time, this is Robin Ayoub and Bryan Montpetit signing off together. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the Localization Fireside Chat. Take the warmth of knowledge and renewed cultural passion with you. Keep exploring. Stay curious. And until next time, this is Robin Ayoub. Keep those global conversations alive.